Hello, my fellow modeling and tabletop gaming enthusiasts, and welcome to the Mediocre Modeler Show. This week, we are going to kind of do a rundown of last week's Conflikt 47 article on the Warlord Community website. We're going to be talking about what's in the dice bag. So I'm sure most of you have probably read this by now if you're interested in Conflikt 47. Some interesting things to note just today, in fact, which is 2 days before this video is going to be published, I did watch a couple of videos from a couple of YouTube channels that actually received sample copies of the new plastic miniatures. So we got to see the full sprues kind of in detail. There are pictures on the Warlord Games website of these particular models and the sprues. So this was the new Stalltroopen, the Vogel Spinny, the linebacker jump mech, as well as the Fireflies. So you can get an idea what's on there, but you actually got to see these really kind of up close and in detail. So I'm guessing probably by the end of this week, we'll see some built and painted examples out there in the wild, which is going to be pretty cool. And I think over the weekend, there was another YouTube channel that actually apparently got an advanced copy of the rules PDF. The stream was like 4 hours long, so I didn't really watch it. Just kind of saw one or two little bits and pieces. I was like, I don't have 4 hours to devote to that, even when I'm at the workbench, unfortunately. So that's pretty cool. It's good to know that we're going to start kind of seeing some of those things coming up in the next couple of weeks, along with all of the articles we've got. So now we've got all the lore articles for the 5 starting nations or factions for Conflikt 47. The Japanese being the last one, which I think just came out last week. So probably next week I'll do kind of a rundown on the lore for the 5 factions, the 5 boroughs, the 5 families. Again, it's not going to be anything new. It's just going to be reviewing what's in the articles, as well as kind of giving my thoughts on them. Because I know, especially with the Axis, I'm not going to say controversy, but people have some opinions on them. So we'll kind of just take a look at that, and I'll share, my thoughts on them. But today we're going to talk about the dice. So we've known for a while, pretty much since the announcement, that the new edition of Conflikt 47 was going to use bolt action 3rd edition rules as the base, and then they were going to add stuff there to make it more individualized, more conflictized. So we knew we were going to use the order dice. So this video is going to kind of be, first part of this is going to be for people that maybe haven't played bolt action like myself. I know like the basic rules of it. I know the basics of the gameplay. I've just never had a chance to play it myself. So one of the basic tenets of bolt action in the bolt action system is you have your order dice. So it's an additional set of D6 that you have one order die for each unit, and you put those all, you and your opponent both put them all into one bag. So that's the way of determining essentially initiative. So you draw a dice out of the bag, you draw a die out of the bag, whoever's die that is, gets to do something with one of their units. I just happen to have the set for my Conflikt 47 German starter here, the old one. So, it's just a 6-sided die with, 6 different faces on here. So, obviously 6 different faces, but to go with that, it's got 6 different orders of what you can do. So, just starting here, we've got run, ambush, rally, fire, advance, and down. And in just a second, we'll kind of go a little bit more in depth into what those are, which is good for me because I'm not fully up to speed on that, but it'll be cool. And I've got a fair amount of order dice already, and I'm going to be getting more, I think, because with all my starter stuff that I'm now going to have to pay tariffs on. Okay, anyway, so we've got the order dice. So you pull an order die out, and that determines who goes. So obviously you're going to have like 2 different colored dice in there. For a standard game of bolt action, right? Or for 1st edition of Conflikt 47. And that determines what you can do. And then you take turns until the bag is empty, and then it starts a new turn. If a unit gets destroyed or runs off the table or something, then you would take an order die out of the bag for the rest of the game, because that unit is no longer in play. So it doesn't need an order die anymore, right? So there are 6 actions essentially that you can do, or 6 orders. So advance is our first one. The unit can move and then fire its weapons. The unit's shots will be less accurate than if it chooses to remain stationary and fire, and some of its weapons may not be able to fire at all. So you can make a move and then you can shoot, but you suffer a penalty for having moved before you shoot. Some weapons have to remain stationary, so like your heavy weapons can't move and shoot, they can't advance. I guess to me this is similar on the heresy side. What I'm used to is you've got your rapid fire weapons, you've got your assault weapons, and then you've got your heavy weapons for infantry. So depending on, you know, like rapid fire, you could move and shoot. Assault, or you could move and shoot up to one shot up to your full range or half range. I could never remember that. I was so used to 30k or 3rd edition 40k, so I when in advance I never really remember. But assault weapons you could always shoot. Heavy weapons you couldn't move and shoot, but you could eventually snap shoot, so gotta hit on 6s. Our next order is ambush. The unit does not move or fire. Instead, the unit takes up positions and waits for a target to present itself. A unit on ambush can interrupt an enemy's unit's movement to shoot at them when in line of sight and range, or infantry can charge into close assault with them if they move within 6 inches. So this is where you don't do anything. You basically just go into hiding, and then you can pop up at some point to either charge or shoot at your opponent, you know, when a unit gets close enough. Our third order is fire. The models in the unit do not move, so this is similar to, well, not similar, half of advance. So the models in the unit do not move. Instead, they open up with their weapons at their chosen target or targets at full effect. Some large and bulky weapons can only be fired by units receiving a fire order, as they require the firer to be stationary. So I'd have to look, but there's definitely your HMGs, possibly your MMGs. I gotta look up the rules on that. I have a bolt action rule. I have 2 bolt action rule books for 3rd edition. I just need to read up on that. But you know, your rifles or your Thompson M1Xs, oh, those look so cool. Can go ahead and open up, you know, and not suffer that same penalty for having moved. 4th order is down. The unit does not move or fire. Instead, the troops hit the dirt and keep their heads down as far as possible, making maximum use of whatever cover is available, improving their cover save by +2. Units can opt to go down when fired upon, or may be forced to do so as they come under enemy attack. So if you choose to go down, you increase your cover save by 2. If you get shot at, you can choose to go, if that unit hasn't activated yet that turn, you can choose to go down, so you take the order die out of the bag, put it with them on a down order, so then they can get their cover save, or, you know, you might be forced to go down due to, you know, whatever circumstances. Next order we have is rally. This unit does not move or fire. Instead, the troops pause for breath, patch up the wounded, pass ammo around, and regroup ready for the following turn. This unit loses all its pin markers. So this is kind of your morale boost-ish. So you can choose to not do anything, you rally, you lose pin markers, so that you have, you know, you're on less of a penalty for the next turn. And then finally we have run. The unit moves at double speed, but cannot fire any of its weapons. A run order is necessary to instigate a charge against an enemy unit and fight them in a close assault. So you have to issue a run order before you can run into combat with an enemy unit, engage them with hands, knives, fists, hands and fists, clubs, knives, giant chain bayonets like the Space Marines, whatever close, claws. You know, my Shrek Wolfen will probably try to do a lot of that. Totem Cord, just eating brains, things like that. Ursus infantry, just ripping people in half kind of thing. You know, cool stuff like that. So those are the 6 orders that are on the order dice. Again, if you're a bolt action player, this is all very familiar to you. And if you're a 1st edition Conflikt 47 player, this is all going to be very familiar to you. So this is, one of the basic, just one of the basics of how the game is played. So you should know that pretty well already. But what Conflikt 47 is doing is it's adding a second dice pool into that bag, and it's going to be in the same bag. So again, this is all from the community article that was released last week on the Warlord Games community site. So I'm going to be reading some of this. I'll throw out some screenshots and captions while we're going through this. So Rift dice are going to be for anything that is classified as a Rift unit, whether it uses like Rift Tech or Rift Energy in order to basically power itself. So again, the example is, a Tiger 2 with a railgun is not technically a Rift unit, but Fireflies with their jump packs are a Rift unit. So there are 3 states of a Rift die. You have active, surging, and exhausted. So just got to get here. So we'll just talk about active excuse me, active and surging to start with. So I'll just kind of throw the clips up on here. So we've got active is just the one, we've got the surging, which has got all the crazy energy coming out, and then the exhausted, which is just a blank face. And it's my understanding that there will be 3 faces that are exhausted, 2 faces are active, and then 1 face that is surging. So what you can use these Rift dice for is to potentially enhance units and allow them to use special abilities. So I think that one of the examples that's used in the article is, and I got to find it again. So we look at Fireflies. So they have the flight special rule, which allows them to fly. So they can jump around the battlefield, ignoring terrain, so on and so forth. And this is blah, 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 apparently a passive ability, but I'm a little bit confused on that. So if you've got an active Rift die, so if your Rift die for that unit is active, you can use that flight ability, which they call a passive ability. But they've got another example that they use is the Regroup in Hell special ability, which allows them to make an advance or run move with the shooting attack or close quarters engagement, and then when that is over, they can fly away again. So it makes them, basically a hit and run attack, which is pretty cool. And it also will hopefully make them a little bit more survivable, because they're probably just going to get mowed down if they're caught out in the open. But once this Rift die is exhausted, they lose that flight special rule until they get another active Rift die. So when we talk active versus passive, right? So I'll throw these shots up here. Rift units may be positively or adversely affected by the Rift die placed with them when it is exhausted or surging. And the Army List entry is going to let you know. Well, a Rift die is active, it functions normally. So the flight, they call it passive because you just have to have the active. Rift die in an active state. But when it's exhausted, you no longer have flight, so you have to walk it, and you can't do Regroup in Hell. So if a Rift die, or if a Rift unit has no Rift dice assigned to it, it will operate as if it has an exhausted Rift die, which we'll kind of cover that here in a little bit. So then we've got active. So a Rift unit can have its active or surging Rift die or use its active or surging Rift die at any time to create a special effect. For example, to enhance a shot from a Rift weapon or use a special ability specific to that unit. If the unit's Rift die is exhausted, it cannot make use of active abilities. Well, most active abilities are only inherently useful when a Rift unit is executing its order, enhancing the shot of a Rift weapon, that they can be used at any time. So this is useful for abilities such as the Dead Rise again. So that kind of explains the differences in the states. So normally, a Rift unit will deploy with its Rift die already set to active, right? And it normally stays with that unit. It's only placed in the dice bag, back into the dice bag, if it is exhausted by being used. And at the end of the turn, you roll your Rift die, and anything that is exhausted goes back in the bag, right? There's a cost to using these abilities. And again, that comes in the form of potentially exhausting your rift die. So if you used that active or surging rift die during the turn, at the end of the turn, you'd roll that die. And if it comes up as exhausted, again, it will go back into the dice bag. You could also have some disadvantageous effects from the exhausted rift die. So it's potential, you want to work on the timing pretty well though. Or you want to keep in mind the timing. Oh, hey, sorry about that, because it could potentially, and I kicked it again. It could potentially have some, again, disadvantageous effects for it. So when a surging rift die is used to trigger an active ability, it's turned to its active phase instead of exhausted. So you kind of step down. So surging, active, exhausted, right? Unless it's used for an overload action or overload bonus. So some rift weapons have active abilities that can be overloaded by exhausting a surging rift die, in which case the rift die is turned to exhausted, so straight from surging to exhausted, after it's completed its activation. So again, it's kind of one of those things where you want to be a little careful because you're going to have that exhausted state after you use it, right? I say right a lot, I guess. Just something from work, I guess. Excuse me. So again, at the end of the turn, each player rolls all of their exhausted rift dice. If it's active or surging, it's assigned back to its unit, and any that are exhausted go back into the bag for the next turn. So if a rift unit receives an order die when it doesn't have a rift die, the owning player would immediately draw a rift die from the bag and roll it. If it's active or surging, you can place it with the unit. If it is exhausted, it goes back in the bag. Blah, blah, blah. Yes. But if you, instead of an order die, so let's say you're okay, so you pulled your order die for your rift unit, you don't have, I'm kind of working these out as we go through this, so I apologize if I don't have it 100%. You pull an order die for a rift unit, but you don't have a rift die. So you pull one out, roll it, see what you get, put it with the unit. But if it's exhausted, I think you'd still put it with the unit and then roll it at the end of the turn. But if you pull a rift die, then you roll it and immediately assign it to one of your units that doesn't have one. And there again, if there's a possibility that it could roll exhausted, so you'd still put it with that unit, but you wouldn't be able to use any active rift abilities that turn. But then you would roll it at the end of the turn and see what it comes up with. So yeah, I think that's kind of cool, honestly. So that's what we know from this article. So I would strongly encourage you to give that a read yourself. I will probably read through this several more times myself, just to make sure that I fully understand what I'm talking about here. The dice themselves are going to be like color coded to the armies. So I'm going to be getting a bunch of American and German rift die when I get my starter sets, anybody else. And you can order them in color, whatever color you wanted, like the 5 different colors that they have: yellow, green, red, blue, black, maybe. I can't remember exactly. I'm kind of just curious as to what colors I'm going to get. So yeah, that's going to be pretty cool. It's definitely going to add, some fun tactics to it, because you'll have those extra abilities that you can use. Your opponent will have the ones that they can use. So you kind of got to remember all that good stuff. I mean, just like with anything, it's just a little bit of extra ability. And it feeds into what they wanted to do with making the Rift a bigger part of the game. So Rift energy. So it's going to be interesting to see, once we do get the rules and we see the army list, what is a Rift unit and what isn't, and what some of these special abilities really are in the end up being. I think that's going to be pretty cool too. Yeah, we know that regular bolt action units, are going to get beat down, but we'll see if Rift stuff does that to them some more. So that'll be kind of interesting to see how that works out. So that is, again, that's just everything here is just from the article on the Warlord Community website. So go ahead, check that out for yourself. Read through all the lore articles. I think, like I said, next week I think is when we're gonna do a rundown of the lore. I just kind of got to get through the last couple and write down my thoughts on it. Nothing earth shattering, honestly. I just kind of want to have a discussion about changes to the lore and kind of, I don't know. I mean, some of the discord online, I suppose you could say, but that's a problem for next week. So yeah, so that just about does it for this week. Definitely hit your links down below. Hit the links down below. Check out Facebook and Instagram, as well as head on over to Warlord Games through that link down in the description. Get in your orders for Konflikt 47, your pre-orders, especially. Also, check the link for the Wisconsin Maritime Museum, where you can stay up to date on the USS Cobia dry docking project. And if you are able, please consider giving a small donation to help the Wisconsin Maritime Museum maintain the USS Cobia for many more years to come. As always, hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for watching. Shirley, I really do appreciate everybody that watches. Some videos get more views than others, but it's always nice when people are watching and giving me feedback on stuff. So, yeah, really hope you enjoyed the show. And until next time, may your paints be thin, your brushes be pointy, and your dice be hot.